Happy Saturday, everybody. As you can tell, I am not at the Wawa's this week. I had some personal stuff I needed to do today, and Deb had some stuff going on this afternoon. So Nikki and I have planned a completely different adventure for this afternoon. So come along with us, and we're gonna go exploring one of Philadelphia's premier landmark areas. Oh look, we ended up at Wawa's anyway.
These days I gotta get over to the barns.
You're back online. Traffic on your route is unusually heavy. You should reach your destination by 12:15 p.m.
Is it?
It's like it's a Saturday on the parkway.
Bitch, you put me on the parkway.
Rerouting.
So, welcome to the West Laurel Hill Cemetery. One of the things that Nikki and I like to do when we're not out hiking is we love exploring old cemeteries. And Laurel Hill is one of the oldest in Philadelphia. It was built in the late 1800s during the big boom in building these large urban cemeteries that are almost as much parks as they are burial plots. So the intention was that people would come out to these cemeteries, bring their families, visit their deceased loved ones, but also have picnics, go for walks, and spend time in nature. So the Laurel Hill Cemetery is closer to Philadelphia, and that was the original cemetery, but when they overflowed their space, they acquired property over here on the other side of the river to create the West Laurel Hill Cemetery. So we've explored already half of the main cemetery, but there is another half that we haven't gone into, and of course we haven't been over here yet. So initially, earlier this week, it looked like the weather this weekend was going to be really bad. So we thought, well, we won't go out hiking. But then, of course, midweek, all that had changed, but we'd already made plans. So we decided we're going to do more of an urban adventure. So not so much hiking today. Hopefully you'll see some interesting stuff anyway. So Catherine Miller has requested the pleasure of our company for lunch. So we're going to take a quick break here and eat our lunch. So as I said earlier, the West Laurel Hill Cemetery was founded about 20 years after Laurel Hill itself. And according to the Wikipedia page, they are sister cemeteries. Now, Nikki was a little bit confused because the first time we went to Laurel Hill proper,
She's always confused.
we did half of it before my feet gave out. So part of the discussion on what we were going to do today was whether we do this cemetery or we do the other half of Laurel Hill. And Nikki hadn't realized that they were two different places. So we're over here today.
Always confused.
We love her anyway. But that's fine because we like checking out cemeteries and everything is good to see. This one is significantly different. It's a lot more modern. I grew up around colonial era cemeteries, so these are all new to me. But most of the ones over in Laurel Hill proper that we saw tend to be from the mid to late 1800s through maybe the early 1940s. This is probably about the latest burial that we saw over there. And the graves themselves reflect a lot of that. There's a lot of variation in the stones. Burial traditions at this scale hadn't quite been established yet, so people did all different kinds of things. As time went on, the shape of the headstones became a lot more consistent. So we see a lot of the scrolled heads over here, a lot of the kind of curve-topped, recessed engraving. So not as much variety here, not the range of symbolism that we've seen over at Laurel Hill, but there are still some really interesting standouts. We're also really excited to see the stained glass still exposed in so many of these. I was very surprised to see some of those burials as late as the 1990s. But over in Laurel Hill, we found a lot of those. The backs had been bricked over to protect the stained glass, so you couldn't see the light coming in through a lot of those. Some of them, especially the ones for the more wealthy people buried there, do still have the stained glass showing. I think the Wanamaker mausoleum does still have, or crypt, does still show their stained glass, which is beautiful. But you just look around here and you can see it's just, especially with it being spring, all the trees are coming into at least bud. So many of the trees are flowering out. It's just beautiful here today. So this was definitely a good choice to come out here today. Even though it may not be our favorite kind of cemetery, and we'll save that one for another visit, Mount Moriah. But it's still, it's a beautiful cemetery, and I'm really glad to be out here today.
Lots of treasures to find.
Lots of treasures to find.
You just got to look a little harder.
So we're trying to figure out what is going on here, because you can see there's some kind of subsidence or disinterment, or we're not sure what's going on here. And these bricks are just kind of scattered here. And then all of these, what look like rough stone, are actually, you can see on this one, the carved gravestones just turned face down. And we've learned in some of our volunteer work that gravestones that fall face down are actually more protected from the weather than ones that remain upright. So they may have intentionally turned them over to protect them, but then why are these ones just sitting here all cockeyed and A, not protected, but also B, not recentered on the family gravestone? It's just a very interesting puzzle. right, so we have reached the end of our steam, if not the end of the cemetery. There was a lot to explore here, and it was really interesting. Again, I prefer the main cemetery to this one, but there was still some really beautiful things to see here. So thank you very much for coming along with me on this unusual journey for us today. There will be more cemetery trips. Nikki and I really enjoy doing cemetery exploration, so we'll probably do this again. Next week, I know we want to do a big adventure. Deb has nothing on her schedule, which is very unusual for her, so we're gonna go a little further afield and see something new for all of us. I'm not sure what that is, but we'll find out next week. Take care, everybody. Have a good week.